Welcome back to Hardball. In an explosive new book, Pulitzer Prize-winning author Ron Suskind charges that the White House ordered the CIA to forge a letter by Iraq's intelligence chief alleging that 9/11 hijacker Mohammed Atta trained for his mission in Iraq. The fake document was allegedly ordered in the fall of 2003 after no weapons of mass destruction were found in Iraq and after former Ambassador Joe Wilson said the Bush administration twisted intelligence to exaggerate the Iraqi threat. Ron Suskind is here with us. His book is The Way of the World, a story of truth and hope in an age of extremism. Ron, I have a great deal of respect for you and your work. I've loved all of your work. But let me take you through a little timeline here for people who have not yet purchased the book, not yet read the book. You allege in the book that in the fall of '03, that George Tenet, then the CIA director, was at the White House and after a meeting in the White House, returned to the CIA headquarters with a piece of paper, a plain cream-colored piece of paper, White House stationery, handed it to a CIA underling, and said the White House wants us to forge a letter from Iraqi intelligence chief alleging that there were weapons of mass destruction and that Mohammed Atta. Is that correct? Is that roughly correct?
Absolutely. And the evidence is indisputable. Hour after hour of conversations, many of them taped, in the book, all on the record. The folks saying that, of course, have come under vituperative attacks from various quarters. The White House, of course, is worried about that part of it because that, Mike, could end with not only congressional investigations, but it's a statutory violation of the statutes founding the CIA. Of course, that's illegality. So that's where the pressure has come on that little bridge between the White House and the CIA of the many, many allegations in the book.
Well, let me ask you, because I'm not nearly as wired as you are into that whole Washington world. In September of '03, we would have already have had Ambassador Wilson's piece appearing in the New York Times in July. We would have already had Ambassador Wilson's wife, Valerie Plame's name being mentioned in a column by Bob Novak, who we hope and wish well with his illness. We would already have had the CIA director, George Tenet, swallowing the 16 words that he gave President Bush in the State of the Union address. We would have already had numerous numbers of anecdotal bits of evidence that the White House distrusted the CIA, and particularly the Vice President's office particularly distrusted George Tenet, the director of the CIA. So what sense would it make for the White House to have Tenet transport this thing?
Well, it was an order. It was an order from the White House to the CIA to be carried out so that there would be essentially a refutation of this letter ostensibly from the Iraq intelligence chief, predated a few months before 9/11 to Saddam, saying that there's a Saddam al-Qaeda connection and that Saddam was out purchasing yellow cake with al-Qaeda's help. It was, as one of the CIA people quoted in the book says, it was a check-the-box issue for all the White House's political troubles, and it is against statute, i.e. it is illegal. And that's why folks are focusing in this book on this specific part and have put pressure on the participants. It's ugly to see. But ultimately, this will come out, no doubt, if not in the next couple of days, because, it's all indisputable, but potentially in congressional hearings going forward under oath with threat of perjury.
But, you've been around a long time. You've seen a lot. You've written a lot. I mean, when you were told that someone actually gave the CIA director a cream-colored piece of stationery with instructions on it, wouldn't your first reaction be my first reaction? No one is dumb enough to put in writing what they clearly, according to you, put in writing.
Well, it's clear they did. Look, I've been out at this for a long time, Mike. They tend not to. But everyone makes mistakes, and this is a case where they did leave a paper trail, even though Dick Cheney has moved for years to say, make it paperless. Here is a piece of paper. People remember it quite vividly. They remember talking about it. They remember it being passed down the chain. Again, there are many, many witnesses to this, and it's clear, it's true. It will come out ostensibly in its fullness, I'm sure, in the next days.
Well,
it's in the book, obviously.
It's in the book.
People read page after page of it with people quoted on the record, and they're like, well, there it is.
Well, it's in the book. I understand that. I read a huge portion of the book this afternoon. It reads like a novel. It's a terrific read. But one thing bothers me. You quote George Tenet in the book, and you claim that he went back over to Langley with the cream-colored piece of stationery. Did you interview George Tenet while you were writing the book?
Well, you know, I've been with George Tenet a long time. I've talked to him many times. I talked to him a lot for the last book. Tenet is a guy who sometimes gets confused. He doesn't remember Slam Dunk. He doesn't remember testimony before 9/11. In this case, I went to the participants, the people involved, near Tenet, below, around Tenet, who were the folks moving forward, executing the plan. They have great memories. They always have. They keep day books. They keep journals. And they, well, it's indisputable. It did occur. People know it all the way through the chain. It popped up on the other end. It roiled the global news cycles. It clearly was a CIA operation, and this is the important part, ordered by the White House.
But you never.
And that's why it makes it so tricky.
You never asked the DCI, you never asked the Director of Central Intelligence Agency point blank, George, did you transport a cream-colored piece of paper to Langley after your meeting at the White House?
For a lot of reasons, I went to really reliable sources, and to be frank about it, at this point, George, as reporters in town know, is not the person you call for anything in terms of memory. Even a short time ago, much less 5 years ago, he doesn't remember wide swaths of almost anything. In this case, we dealt with people handling the situation who remember with great vividness what George says, what they did, the moment of passage, and down the chain. And that's why the book has such strength, is because you can see clearly that this was an operation, and people are quoted fully based on their personal knowledge.
It does. There's no doubt about it. And in reading the book, I have to tell you, in reading all your stuff, I admire all of your stuff, but in reading this book and these charges that have laid out here, and because of my background covering like city stuff and everything for years, I can't help but come to the conclusion at the end of this book is basically charging the President of the United States or the Vice President of the United States with being an accessory before the fact to 4,000 murders and more in Iraq. They lied us into war, according to this book.
Well, the book lays out the evidence step by step, all the way to that point in early January 2003, mind you. This is important. Weeks before the President's State of the Union address and a month before Colin Powell goes to the UN, that we are meeting with the Iraqi intelligence chief in a secret location, a back channel. He tells us, hey, there's no WMD, and also here's the mind of Saddam Hussein. Here's why he's not worried. He's worried about the Iranians and being shown he's a toothless tiger. All of this is clear later, demonstrable to the world. We know it well before the war. The head of British intelligence, again on the record, says, you know, the U.S. was, well, moving forward like a runaway train. This was the British version of let's stop this thing. We don't stop it. We ignore the intelligence chief. We then, of course, have a real problem. We put him into hiding, Mike. We pay him $5 million from the U.S. government. We've hidden him for 5 years. Of course, he still remains the Jack of Diamonds in Bush's deck of most wanted men. There's a $1 million reward for this fellow, Habush. And it has really been the smoking gun, best-kept secret of the United States government. And it's one that shows clearly a lack of faith in the basic principles of democracy in terms of transparency and especially accountability on this most august issue of war. And that's why, of course, everyone is buying it and reading it, and everybody is, congressional investigators are lining up to say, this is indisputable. The evidence is here. Let's get people under oath with subpoenas, and let's finish this. The book is actually very hopeful. It says we need to embrace truth before this era ends if we're going to move forward cleanly and with vigor, with a kind of moral energy that has been bled away. You talk about 4,000 deaths. Well, the fact is, what the book is about is how over these years America has lost its moral authority and how people are struggling to get it back now in this year of consent.
Ron Suskind, thanks very much. The book is The Way of the World. It reads like a novel.